All right. Well, today here, virtually at the Saskatchewan Science Centre, we're going to be talking about climate because it's Science Literacy Week. And we have a very special guest with us who you may recognize, meteorologist Bradlyn Oakes. Bradlyn's job is to study the weather and help people like us know what to expect. You may have seen her on CTV News. Thank you so much for joining us today, Bradlyn.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So first of all, you have a very interesting job. I heard that science and math are a big part of what you do, and that you also enjoy storm watching.
Yeah, all of those things. So I obviously talk about the weather every single day in my job and tell you what's going to happen over the next week or so. And science and math is a huge part of that. Even growing up, I really loved any sort of sciences, any sort of math. And I really liked being outside in the outdoor world. So I put all those things together to be able to do the job that I do today. And anytime that I can get out and see any sort of weather, whether that is a blizzard or a thunderstorm, any of those types of things, I love to be out in the elements safely going out into the weather. So
Yeah, no, that's absolutely awesome. And then because of that, I'm guessing that you get to do quite a bit of traveling, or you've done quite a bit of traveling to learn about what you do.
yeah, I think that for me, the my actual field that I'm in and the love of travel go very hand in hand. So I've got to experience quite a few different areas around the globe. I've lived in multiple different countries, traveled to a lot of different places just to see what the weather is doing, what the climate is like in all of these different areas. And it's really given me a really great insight into what is happening in our global climate system, as well as different cities, areas of their actual weather systems.
Cool. So, since we're talking about climate, what are some unique things that you've noticed that are different about here in Saskatchewan compared to maybe some other parts of Canada and the world in general?
Well, what's interesting about Saskatchewan is that you can categorize it as a continental climate. So obviously, we're not close to any sort of oceans anywhere close to us. So here we can get to very extremes in both winter and in the summer. So that is something really interesting about the prairies and Saskatchewan in general is that we don't have a lot of ocean. We don't have a lot of the ocean coming in to actually impact the weather or the climate in our province. So we can see a lot. We see a little bit of that as it comes over the mountains, goes through Alberta, comes into Saskatchewan. But generally, we have this continental climate system. That means that in the winters, we can see extreme weather events like blizzards, lots of snowfall, some drier conditions as well. And then in the summer, we can obviously get up into those mid 30s, 40-degree temperatures in the summer. We can see drought conditions. We can also see major storm systems because of the way that we're at, or the area that we're actually in. So these storms can cause tornadoes and all of the different weather hazards that we can see. So it's really interesting in Saskatchewan seeing that we can go from both ends of the spectrum. We're not a temperate climate where we are seeing, temperatures in the mid-teens for the entire year because we really have those ocean breezes coming in. Instead, from winter to summer, spring and fall, we have all the different seasons and sometimes can have all four in one day.
Yeah, and sometimes, like even just taking a look outside, it's really easy to see those very drastic changes happening very, very quickly. We've kind of talked a little bit about it, but we use the terms climate and weather sometimes interchangeably, but there is quite a big difference between what those two terms actually mean. And could you tell us a little bit about like what the differences are?
Yeah, so weather and climate are actually very different. So, one of the best analogies that I've ever heard of it is you can think of the climate as your personality, who you are as a person. But you can think of the weather as your mood for that day. So, you may be a bubbly, upbeat person generally, but one day you may, be a little bit angry, be a little bit sad. So, your weather changes. So, your climate is a general term for what the weather will do on a longer period of time in the actual area that you're in. Whereas your weather can be an outlier one day. One day we could have a very, very cold summer day, or you can have a really, really hot winter day. And neither of those things impact the actual climate of the area. Because as we were talking about earlier, is that in Saskatchewan, we have this continental climate. We have this climate where we see cold winters, warm summers, we have some extreme weather events, and that's all generally our climate. Whereas our weather on a day to day basis does change. We could see some rain, we could see a thunderstorm, we could have a sunny day. But that's just one piece of the puzzle. You have to look over actually a 30-year time period to be able to determine climate normals. So when we're looking at what the climate should be right away, we're looking at a 30-year period over which we look at every single day and how hot it got and how cold it got and how much precipitation there was.
Yeah. So, with this being Science Literacy Week and being a science educator myself, one of my favorite things to be able to do is to be able to talk to people about science and get them interested in science. And I just wanted to hear a little bit about like what you like about being a science communicator and why do you find it to be really important?
I think that's one of those things that I really enjoy as well, just talking to people about science, about actually getting to talk to people about what's happening in an everyday basis. So for me, science communications, especially when I'm talking about weather or climate, it's one of those things that everybody talks about, everybody notices. And it's also one of those like icebreaker conversations that people have, like, how about the weather today? And I love to be able to give people more insight into what is happening in the weather, what is happening in our climate system, what is happening as we're seeing anthropogenic climate change over time, and how that means a warming of the global climate system, and how that is making changes on our everyday basis. And I think people really get to understand that and are able to connect with weather and climate a little bit. So for me, when I'm talking about weather and I'm talking about climate, people get it because it impacts everything that they do, whether they're wearing a jacket for the day or they choose to drive their car versus ride their bike or walk somewhere because of what the weather or the climate is going to be at that time, and how climate change is changing how we're adapting to different things and how we're going about our lives as well.
Cool. So, one of my last question here for today, we have a lot of we have a lot of people in this province that want to be scientists and they want to learn about the world around them. And if someone is interested in becoming a climate scientist, a meteorologist, what are some of the things that they can do today to kind of start moving themselves onto that path of becoming one of those very important scientists in our world?
Yeah, so to become a meteorologist or climate scientist, the first thing you have to want to care about the weather. You want to care about what is happening in the atmosphere around you. So I always think that people should go out and look up at the sky, try to see what the clouds are doing, try to understand what weather phenomena are actually happening in their own backyard. Because that's the first step. If you care about what's happening in your backyard, then you can care about what's happening in your city and then in your province. And then if you're somebody who wants to be a science or a climate scientist, or you want to be a meteorologist, you do have to start working a little bit on that math, physics side of things a little bit as well. So I would tell, especially younger people, if they're going through high school or middle school or anything, to start to look at those sciences and making sure that they are actually diving into them, interested in them, because it is a lot of math and science to talk about climate, because a lot of things are done on computer models or supercomputers. Some of the biggest supercomputers in the world are dedicated to climate and to weather. So getting to know your math and your science basics, and you do need to know a little bit of chemistry and a little bit of biology as well. You need to know, be quite well rounded, and then actually caring about looking what's happening out in your own backyard and understanding what is happening there. Then you can take it and just keep going with it. There are lots of great online resources. I'm sure the Science Centre has lots of resources as well this week for Science Literacy Week all about climate, where you can start to learn about those different things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And for Science Literacy Week this week, there are a number of activities that we have on our website. We're doing a partnership with the Regina Public Library on Saturday, September 25th. So we're doing an event there, and we're able to have great scientists be able to talk to us this week. So thank you so much for joining us today, Bradlyn. And I hope everyone can see you on CTV News and telling them about the weather every single day.
Yeah, and I love to to talk about the weather every single day.
Yeah, awesome. So thank you so much, and
Thanks for
you have
having
a
me.
have a great rest of your day here.
Yeah, you too.